Welcome to RTech. Today I'll be demonstrating how to set up a Cerbo or a Chrono device to integrate with the Garmin CORE system. In order for a Victron energy system to properly communicate and integrate with the Garmin CORE system, there are a few settings that need to be changed in the Venus OS settings on a Cerbo or a Chrono device. Those settings are changing some of the communication protocols that are used for the VE.Can ports on the Cerbo, enabling MQTT communication so we can pull over the HTML5 app from Venus OS onto a Cerbo display, and setting a instance ID for a device so it can properly broadcast messaging from the Cerbo or a Chrono to the Garmin system. In order to properly set up and configure a Cerbo or a Chrono device to communicate with the Garmin CORE system, we'll need to access those settings on the device. Those settings can be accessed through a GX touchscreen plugged into the Cerbo. On the device itself, you can access those settings. For demonstration purposes, we'll be using my computer. So to start with the configuration process, we'll want to get into this main settings menu here, where we see the device list. This device list is going to show all of the devices connected to the Victron energy system. We're going to scroll down to the settings navigation menu item. Once settings is selected, we'll continue to scroll down until we arrive at the services menu item. From here, once selected, you'll see that listed are VE.Can port 1 and VE.Can port 2. So it's important that we use VE.Can port 1 when we're configuring protocols for the Cerbo or your Chrono. This is due to communication protocol preferences. So we'll select VE.Can port 1, and under CANbus profile, this is where we would select the protocol in which this CAN port will be communicating. So if we look through the list of options here, the option that we want to select is RVC, which is communicating at 250 kilobits per second. So once VE.Can has been configured to communicate over RVC protocol, it'll bring you back to the device list in the settings. So what we'll need to do is navigate back to the services settings and then back to VE.Can 1. So once we're back at the services page, we'll go into VE.Can port 1. So we see that VE.Can port 1 has been configured to now communicate over RVC protocol. The one last thing we'll need to do in VE.Can port 1 is we'll need to set the instance ID of the multiplus for a DC source status message. So by selecting devices, we'll find the multiplus 2 in the RVC devices list. Once the multiplus 2 has been selected, we'll then scroll down to configuration. And in configuration, you'll see 4 different menu items. What we're concerned with is DC source instance. So right now it's set to DC source instance 1, and this we'll want to change to DC source instance 4. By setting the multiplus's DC source instance from 1 to 4, it ensures that we're getting the battery information from the Links BMS, which is also reporting DC source instancing. That is by default set to 1, so we'll keep it at 1. But changing the DC source instance to 4 in the multiplus allows us to just receive that DC source messaging from the links. So once we have that DC source instance set to 4, we can back out and we'll return to the services page in the menu. So after we've set the DC source instance on the multiplus to 4, the last thing that we need to do is back out to that services page, and we want to select the MQTT access toggle to on instead of off. And by turning this toggle on, we're now allowing Cerbo or a Chrono device to communicate to the Cerbo display and be able to broadcast their HTML5 app. And it will allow us to access remote console on the Cerbo display. Thanks for joining me today as I walk you through how to configure Venus OS so it can properly communicate with the Garmin CORE system. If you have any questions, please reach out to our staff. And as always, any relevant links will be in the description below.